I'm Helena, 32, a marketing executive from Boston whose life shattered when pregnancy changed everything. My husband James once looked at me with love, but his mother Evelyn always thought I wasn't good enough. I never imagined being thrown out of my own home at 7 months pregnant, my belly swollen with our child. What they didn't know was that my connection to someone important would turn their cruel game upside down. Where are you watching from today? If you've ever dealt with toxic in-laws, hit that like and subscribe button while I tell you how karma came for mine. Growing up in a middle-class family in Boston taught me the value of hard work. My parents weren't wealthy, but they made sure I had everything I needed, especially education. I worked part-time jobs through college, graduated with honors, and landed an entry-level position at a prestigious marketing firm. By age 28, I had climbed to executive status through sheer determination and endless late nights. Then came the corporate mixer that changed everything. Our firm was celebrating a successful partnership with Ellis Technologies, and the room buzzed with professionals in sleek suits and cocktail dresses. I was discussing campaign metrics with colleagues when I felt someone staring. Turning around, I locked eyes with the most handsome man I had ever seen. "That statistical analysis you just mentioned," he said, approaching with confidence. "I'd love to hear more." His name was James Ellis, son of the company's founder and their rising star in business development. Unlike most executives I'd met, James listened intently to my ideas, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely impressed by my knowledge. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers, and I felt that unmistakable flutter of possibility. Our first date was dinner at a quaint Italian restaurant where hours passed like minutes. James was charming, intelligent, and refreshingly down-to-earth despite his family's wealth. We connected over our shared love of classic films, hiking, and ambitious career goals. Within weeks, we were inseparable. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," James told me after we had been dating for 6 months. "You care about making your own way in the world. I respect that so much." 8 months into our relationship, during a weekend trip to Cape Cod, James proposed on the beach at sunset. The ring was stunning, a family heirloom diamond reset in a modern platinum band. Overwhelmed with happiness, I said yes without hesitation. We called our families from the hotel that evening, and while my parents were overjoyed, James's mother Evelyn's response was notably reserved. "How wonderful," she said, her voice cool over the speakerphone. "We should meet properly before you set a date, of course." That first meeting with Evelyn Ellis came 2 weeks later at her sprawling colonial home in Beacon Hill. Everything about her was immaculate: her perfectly coiffed silver hair, her expensive cashmere sweater, her manicured garden visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. She greeted me with air kisses and a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Helena," she said, looking me up and down, "James tells me you work in marketing. How quaint." Throughout lunch, Evelyn asked probing questions about my family background, where I had gone to school, and my career trajectory. Each answer seemed to disappoint her slightly, though she maintained perfect politeness. When I mentioned my father was a high school teacher and my mother a nurse, she nodded with what looked like pity. "We've always valued education in the Ellis family," she said. "Harvard for 3 generations. Where did you attend again, dear?" "Boston University," I replied, feeling the first sting of inadequacy. "On partial scholarship." James squeezed my hand under the table and changed the subject, but the message was clear: I wasn't quite what Evelyn had hoped for her son. Despite these red flags, I was too in love to be deterred. James assured me his mother would warm up to me over time, and I believed him. We planned our wedding for the following spring, a moderate-sized affair that became a battleground of subtle power plays. Evelyn insisted on the country club her family had belonged to for generations, overruled my choice of flowers because "lilies are funeral flowers, dear," and somehow managed to invite 30 of her friends without consulting me. The wedding day itself was beautiful, but tense. I overheard Evelyn telling a guest, "The dress is lovely, though perhaps a bit ambitious for her figure." When my father gave his heartfelt toast, she whispered audibly, "How charming. You can tell he's not used to these events." Still, married life with James initially seemed perfect. We bought a beautiful brownstone in Back Bay, enjoying the rhythm of our life together. Both our careers flourished. James was promoted to Vice President of Business Development at Ellis Technologies, while I led increasingly successful campaigns for my firm. My closest ally at work was Sandra Williams, the chief marketing officer, who had become my mentor and friend. A brilliant strategist in her 50s, Sandra had broken numerous glass ceilings and took me under her wing early in my career. "You have raw talent, Helena," she told me during one of our monthly mentor lunches. "But more importantly, you have integrity and emotional intelligence. Those are rarities in this business." Meanwhile, I noticed James calling his mother more frequently, seeking her approval on everything from investments to vacation plans. When we redecorated our home, he insisted on using his mother's interior designer. When we discussed holiday plans, his family's traditions always took precedence. "She's alone since Dad died," he would explain. "Family is everything to her." I tried to be understanding. After 2 years of marriage, we began discussing starting a family. James seemed enthusiastic, talking about converting the spare bedroom into a nursery and even suggesting baby names. "Ellis men make strong, smart babies," he boasted one night. "Mom keeps all my baby things in the attic. She'll be thrilled to have a grandchild." Little did I know how quickly that enthusiasm would change once I actually became pregnant. After 6 months of trying to conceive, the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test sent waves of joy through my entire body. I planned a special dinner to tell James, complete with his favorite steak and a tiny pair of baby shoes wrapped in a box for dessert. When he opened it, his face lit up. "We're pregnant. You're sure?" He lifted me into a gentle hug, spinning me around our kitchen. "This is amazing, Helena. We're going to be parents." That night, he called Evelyn immediately to share the news. I could hear her voice through the phone, not quite as excited as I'd expected. James's smile faltered slightly as he listened to her. "Yes, Mom, we're sure. No, it's still early. Of course, we'll be careful about announcements." The first change I noticed was James canceling our first prenatal appointment at the last minute. "Emergency at work," he texted 20 minutes before we were supposed to meet at the doctor's office. "Take notes for me." I sat alone in the waiting room, watching other expectant couples holding hands and whispering excitedly. The doctor confirmed I was 6 weeks along, gave me prenatal vitamins, and printed a barely visible ultrasound image of what would become our baby. When I showed James that evening, he glanced at it briefly. "Can't see much yet, can you? When will it look more like a baby?" The first trimester hit me hard. Morning sickness wasn't just in the mornings, it was all day, an unrelenting nausea that made even the smell of James's cologne unbearable. I lost 7 pounds, became dehydrated twice, and struggled to maintain my performance at work. James seemed increasingly distant, working later hours, and scheduling weekend golf games with clients. Calls between James and his mother increased. Several times I entered rooms to find James quickly ending phone conversations. Once I distinctly heard him say, "She doesn't need to know about that, Mom. I'll handle it." By week 14, the nausea finally subsided. I began to show slightly a small but definite bump that I proudly displayed in a fitted dress at work. Sandra noticed immediately. "Congratulations!" she exclaimed, genuinely delighted. "How are you feeling? How's James taking to impending fatherhood?" I hesitated. "He's adjusting. His work schedule is hectic right now." Sandra's eyes narrowed slightly, but she just patted my hand. "Men sometimes need time to connect with the idea. It becomes more real for them later." Evelyn insisted on hosting a dinner to celebrate the pregnancy at her home. James was unusually tense on the drive over, repeatedly reminding me to be respectful of Mom's feelings about family traditions. The dinner was elaborate, with Evelyn wearing a new dress and her finest pearls. She had prepared James's childhood favorites, but served me plain chicken and steamed vegetables. "No seasonings," she explained. "We need to be careful with the baby's development. In my day, we were much more cautious about such things." Throughout dinner, she peppered me with questions about my pregnancy plan. Did I intend to continue working? Was I eating properly? Had I researched the Ellis family's traditional names? The firstborn son has carried the name William for 5 generations. She informed me, assuming we were having a boy. "It's a family tradition." "We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet," I reminded her gently. "And we'd like to choose the name together." "Well," she said with a tight smile, "some traditions are worth preserving." After dessert, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Returning down the hallway, I heard hushed voices from Evelyn's study. "The bloodline matters, James," Evelyn was saying. "Your father would be concerned about suitable mothers for the Ellis heir." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mom," James replied. "We don't even know if the pregnancy will—" They stopped talking when I deliberately made noise with my footsteps. James emerged looking flustered, claiming they were discussing a family photo album. The next morning, while James was showering, I did something I'd never done before. I searched his email. A message from Evelyn contained an attachment labeled "Family Medical History Important." The document detailed genetic conditions present in the Ellis line, including a rare hereditary condition affecting male fertility. According to the medical reports, Ellis men often had extremely low sperm counts, making natural conception difficult. I was stunned. If male infertility ran in James's family, our conception after only 6 months of trying was either miraculous or— I slammed the laptop closed when I heard the shower stop, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask. At work, Sandra noticed my distraction. During a private meeting about an upcoming campaign, she gently asked if everything was all right. "Just pregnancy brain," I lied, fighting back tears. "Helena," she said firmly, "I've known you for years. Something's wrong and it's not pregnancy brain." I broke down and told her about the overheard conversation and the medical history I'd discovered. "The thing is," I concluded, "we got pregnant relatively easily. If James has fertility issues he never mentioned." Sandra's expression was grave. "Have you talked to him about this?" "I'm afraid to," I admitted. "Things already feel so fragile." As my pregnancy progressed, Evelyn insisted on planning the baby shower, excluding most of my friends, and filling the guest list with her social circle. The event felt like a performance, with Evelyn presenting me like a vessel for her grandchild rather than a mother-to-be. She referred to the baby as the Ellis heir, repeatedly never acknowledging my contribution to its existence. Then came the 20-week anatomy scan, the appointment where we could learn the baby's sex. James actually attended this one, sitting stiffly beside me as the technician moved the ultrasound wand over my rounded belly. "Congratulations," the technician said warmly. "You're having a girl." I felt a surge of joy, already imagining a daughter with my curly hair and James's green eyes. But beside me, James's face fell. He muttered something about needing air and stepped out of the room. When I found him in the parking lot, he was on the phone with Evelyn. "Yes, a girl," he was saying, disappointment evident in his voice. "I know, Mom. The first in generations." In that moment, I realized that for the Ellis family, my daughter was already a disappointment simply for being female. By the time I reached 7 months, my pregnancy had become both a joy and a burden. My body ached constantly. Sleep was elusive with the baby's nocturnal acrobatics, and work required increasing accommodation. But I treasured each flutter and kick, already deeply in love with the little girl growing inside me. James, however, had become a stranger. He slept in the guest room, claiming my pregnancy snoring kept him awake. He criticized everything from my maternity clothes to the nursery colors I had chosen. "Lavender is too feminine," he complained when I showed him the paint samples. "What if we have a boy next?" "We're having a girl now," I reminded him, "and I like lavender." He shrugged and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the empty room that would become our daughter's first home. One morning, I noticed my prenatal vitamins missing from the bathroom counter. I found them in the kitchen trash can, half the pills dumped out. When I confronted James, he claimed he had accidentally knocked them over while reaching for his razor. "I'll buy you more," he said dismissively. "Those are probably contaminated now anyway." But the next day, my backup bottle also disappeared, and the day after that, my pregnancy tea was emptied down the drain when I stepped out to answer the door. James missed my glucose screening, my birthing class registration, and the Lamaze workshop I had specifically scheduled on a weekend to accommodate his work. Each absence came with a different excuse: work emergencies, client meetings, family obligations. Then came the text messages. I wasn't snooping. James had left his phone on the counter while showering, and messages from Mom kept lighting up the screen. "Did you discuss the situation with her yet? Time is running out to make arrangements. Getting rid of her before the birth would be cleaner." My hands trembling, I unlocked his phone using the birthday passcode he'd never changed. The full conversation revealed weeks of exchanges about the Helena situation and protecting family interests. When James emerged from the shower, I held up his phone. "What exactly are you and your mother planning to do with me?" His face darkened. "You went through my phone. That's a violation of trust, Helena." "Trust?" I laughed bitterly. "You and your mother are discussing getting rid of me, And you're worried about trust. You're misinterpreting, he insisted. Mom's concerned about your work schedule after the baby. She thinks you should consider stepping back from your career. Liar, I said quietly. She's never wanted me in this family. And now for some reason you don't either. James stormed out, returning hours later with takeout food and flowers as if nothing had happened. But something fundamental had shifted between us, a chasm opening that I wasn't sure could ever be bridged. Evelyn began dropping by our home unannounced, usually when James was at work. She would rearrange the furniture, replace my chosen baby items with her own purchases, and leave without explanation. Once I came home to find she had removed the lavender paint from the nursery and replaced it with traditional baby blue. A mistake at the store, she explained when confronted. Blue is more practical anyway. You might have a boy next time. I repainted the room lavender the next day, only to find it blue again a week later. James started coming home later and later, claiming work demands. His breath often smelled of scotch, and once I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. When I checked our joint bank account, I discovered large withdrawals, $5,000 here, $8,000 there, with no explanation. Investment opportunities, he said vaguely when questioned. Nothing for you to worry about. One evening, I attempted a final honest conversation. James, something's obviously wrong. We're having a baby in less than 2 months, and you're acting like you can't stand the sight of me. What's happening to us? Nothing's happening, he snapped. You're being hormonal and paranoid. This is exactly what Mom warned me about. Your mother has been trying to sabotage our marriage from day one, I countered. And now she's turning you against me and our daughter. Don't be ridiculous. He grabbed his keys. I need some air. He didn't return that night. The next day, my doctor called with concerns about my recent blood pressure readings. Stress and anxiety aren't good for you or the baby right now, she warned. Is everything okay at home? I lied and said yes. That same afternoon, Sandra called with unexpected news. The CEO of Contech Industries is looking for a marketing consultant for a special project. He specifically asked if you'd be interested despite your maternity leave coming up. Apparently, he was impressed with the Westfield campaign you led last year. Contech was a major competitor to Ellis Technologies. Taking the job would be professionally rewarding, but personally complicated. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, Sandra replied. But don't wait too long. It's a remarkable opportunity, especially for someone about to take maternity leave. Little did I know this opportunity would soon become my lifeline. The following week, I left work early due to painful Braxton Hicks contractions. The doctor had assured me they were normal but recommended rest and hydration when they became uncomfortable. I planned to take a warm bath and spend the evening with my pregnancy book. Walking into my home, I immediately sensed something was different. Female voices drifted from upstairs. Following the sound to the nursery, I found Evelyn directing 2 workmen who were removing the lavender crib bedding I had lovingly washed and prepared. The rocking chair I had chosen was gone, replaced by an ornate antique I'd never seen. The walls were being repainted yet again pale blue. "What are you doing?" I asked, one hand automatically cradling my belly. Evelyn turned, not the least bit embarrassed at being caught. "Oh, Helena, you're home early. This is my home and this is my daughter's nursery," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You have no right to change anything." "James gave me his key and full permission," she replied smoothly. "These are family heirlooms, much more appropriate than those chain store items you selected. The Ellis tradition." "I don't care about Ellis traditions." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "This is my child, my nursery, my home." Evelyn's face hardened, the polite mask dropping completely. "That's where you're wrong, dear. This has never been your home. It's an Ellis property, part of James's inheritance." "We bought it together," I protested. "My name is on the mortgage." She laughed, a cold sound that sent chills through me. "A formality. James's trust paid for it entirely." "Get out," I said, trembling with anger. "Get out of my house right now." Instead of leaving, Evelyn stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You were never good enough for my son. A nobody from a nobody family trying to climb the social ladder. And now you think you're providing an heir. You'll never give my son a baby worthy of our family name." The cruelty of her words stunned me into silence. Before I could respond, the front door slammed and James's footsteps pounded up the stairs. "Mother Helena." "What's going on?" he demanded, looking between us. "Your wife is having one of her emotional outbursts," Evelyn said calmly. "I was just helping prepare the nursery properly and she came in screaming. She's completely redecorating without my permission," I explained, fighting to keep my voice steady. "James, this has to stop. Your mother cannot keep interfering in our lives, especially with the baby coming." I expected my husband to defend me, to finally take my side against his mother's constant intrusions. Instead, he looked at me with cold, distant eyes I barely recognized. "Mother is trying to help. She has experience with babies. You don't." "I'm the mother of this child," I said, placing both hands protectively over my belly. "Not her." James's expression hardened. "Maybe you shouldn't be." The words hit like a physical blow. "What did you just say?" "This isn't working, Helena. It hasn't been for months." He gestured vaguely around us. "All this pregnancy drama, the constant complaints about my mother, your suspicious behavior checking my phone and accounts." Suspicious behavior. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your mother is literally destroying our daughter's nursery right in front of us." "It's not even your daughter," Evelyn interjected, a malicious gleam in her eyes. "Mother, please," James said, but his tone was more cautioning than scolding. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. "What does she mean, James?" He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to do this now, but maybe it's best to get everything out in the open." "Do what now?" My voice had become small, my throat constricting with fear. "I want a divorce," he stated flatly. "I've already spoken with my lawyer. Given your emotional state, we think it's best if you move out immediately." The room seemed to tilt around me. "You want me to leave? I'm 7 months pregnant with your child." "That's just it." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't marry you for a kid, Helena. My career was just taking off. Mother was right, we should have waited." "So because the timing is inconvenient, you're throwing away our marriage, our family." "Just leave with that big belly," he said dismissively. "My lawyer will contact you about terms." The pain that ripped through me then wasn't just emotional, it was physical. A sharp cramp seized my abdomen, making me gasp and double over. "She's faking," Evelyn said dismissively. "Always so dramatic." Another cramp hit stronger than the first. I clutched the doorframe for support, breathing heavily. "I need to sit down," I managed. "Something's wrong." Neither of them moved to help me. James checked his watch impatiently. "I have a dinner meeting," he said. "Mother, can you handle this?" "Of course, dear," she replied. "Go on. I'll make sure she understands the situation." As James turned to leave, I called out, "You can't just throw me out of my own home. I have rights." He paused at the top of the stairs. "Actually, as I said, this house belongs to my family trust. You have until tomorrow to collect your personal items. After that, the locks will be changed." The finality in his voice triggered another wave of pain. This time I felt a wetness between my legs, not my water breaking, but spotting. I was bleeding. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called my friend Mia, trying to keep my voice steady despite the pain. "I need help," I whispered. "Can you come get me? It's an emergency." Evelyn watched me with cold satisfaction as I struggled to the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. The cramps were coming regularly now, each one stealing my breath. "You never belonged here," she said from the doorway. "James will find someone suitable now, someone who can actually give him a proper heir." I ignored her, methodically packing essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip the suitcase. When Mia texted that she was outside, I dragged my luggage down the stairs, one agonizing step at a time. As I reached the front door, I heard the distinct sound of locks being changed in the kitchen. James had wasted no time making good on his threat. The humiliation of waddling to Mia's car, visibly pregnant and crying neighbors watching curiously from behind curtains, was almost unbearable. But the physical pain eclipsed even that shame. Something was definitely wrong with the baby. "Hospital," I managed to tell Mia as I collapsed into her passenger seat. "I think I'm having contractions." The emergency room confirmed stress-induced preterm labor contractions. The doctor administered medication to stop them and kept me overnight for observation, her face grave as she explained the risks. "Extreme emotional distress can trigger labor," she explained. "You need to eliminate stress immediately for the sake of your baby." But how could I eliminate stress when I had just been made homeless, my marriage had imploded, and I was facing single motherhood with no preparation? The answer came the next morning when Sandra appeared in my hospital room, concern etched on her face. "Mia called me," she explained, taking my hand. "Helena, why didn't you tell me things were this bad?" Through tears, I explained everything: James's betrayal, Evelyn's cruelty, my sudden homelessness, and the medical scare. Sandra listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly determined. When I finished, she squeezed my hand firmly. "You're coming to stay with me," she said in a tone that brooked no argument. "We have a guest house on our property that's fully furnished, private, comfortable, and far away from those toxic people." "I can't impose," I began. "Not another word," she cut me off. "Thomas and I have plenty of room, and you need peace right now. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about your daughter, too." And so, with my life packed into 2 suitcases and my pregnant belly leading the way, I followed Sandra out of the hospital toward an uncertain future, leaving behind the man I had thought would be my forever, and the life we had built together. Sandra's guest house was a charming Cape Cod cottage nestled at the edge of her expansive property in Wellesley. With 2 bedrooms, a cozy living area, and a kitchen stocked with healthy pregnancy-friendly foods, it offered a sanctuary I desperately needed. The second bedroom had been hurriedly prepared as a temporary nursery complete with a crib and changing table. "Emergency baby shopping," Sandra explained with a smile. "Thomas insisted we get everything you might need right away." Thomas Williams. Sandra's husband proved to be as kind and generous as his wife. A tall, distinguished man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and keen blue eyes, he welcomed me with genuine warmth. "You focus on growing that baby," he said firmly. "Everything else can wait." The first week in the guest house was a blur of tears and sleep. My body responding to the emotional trauma demanded rest, while my mind raced with questions, regrets, and fears. Sandra checked on me daily, bringing meals and sitting with me in compassionate silence when words failed. Gradually, as the shock subsided, practical concerns emerged. I needed a lawyer, a long-term housing plan, and a financial strategy for single motherhood. My savings were modest, and while my job offered good maternity benefits, I had no idea what the divorce would mean for my financial security. Over dinner with Sandra and Thomas a week after moving in, I broached the subject of finding my own place. "Absolutely not," Sandra said immediately. "You're staying here until well after the baby arrives. We insist." "I can't impose indefinitely," I protested. "You've already been too kind." "It's not kindness, it's human decency," Thomas replied. "Besides, I have a proposition for you if you're interested." It turned out that Thomas wasn't just any businessman, he was the CEO of Contech Industries, one of the largest technology firms on the East Coast, and a direct competitor to Ellis Technologies. "The consulting position Sandra mentioned. That was my idea," he explained. "We're considering acquiring a smaller firm that specializes in the same market segment as Ellis Technologies. Your insights would be invaluable." "Because I was married to James?" I asked cautiously. "Because you're exceptionally good at what you do," Thomas corrected. "Sandra has shown me your portfolio. The fact that you have insider knowledge of Ellis Technologies is secondary, though potentially useful." I hesitated, uncertain about the ethical implications. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable leveraging my marriage that way even after what happened." "I respect that." Thomas nodded. "The position would focus on marketing strategy, not corporate espionage. Any information you provide would be limited to what's publicly available or general industry knowledge." After careful consideration, I accepted the consulting role. The work would be remote, flexible around my pregnancy needs, and well compensated exactly what I needed as I prepared for single motherhood. As I delved into the project analyzing market trends and competitor positions, I discovered concerning patterns in Ellis Technologies' financial reports. James's department had reported suspiciously consistent growth with numbers that seemed too perfect to be genuine. While this wasn't part of my assigned analysis, my marketing background made the anomalies obvious. Meanwhile, Sandra became my pregnancy champion, accompanying me to doctor's appointments, helping me prepare for labor, and even organizing a small baby shower with my close friends. The nursery in the guest house gradually transformed into a lavender haven filled with books, soft toys, and clothes for my daughter. "Have you chosen a name?" Sandra asked one evening as we folded tiny onesies. "Lily," I said without hesitation. "It was my grandmother's name." 3 weeks after being thrown out of my home, I encountered Evelyn at an upscale restaurant in Boston. I was having lunch with Sandra when Evelyn entered with her garden club friends. Her eyes widened when she spotted me, then narrowed with calculation. Excusing herself from her companions, she made a beeline for our table. "Helena," she greeted with false sweetness. "How interesting to see you here. I thought these establishments had dress codes." Her gaze flicked dismissively over my maternity dress. Before I could respond, Sandra straightened in her chair. "Evelyn Ellis," she said coldly. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced. I'm Sandra Williams, Helena's friend and colleague." Evelyn faltered slightly, recognition dawning. "Williams of Contech Industries." "My husband is the CEO," Sandra confirmed. "We're very protective of Helena and her baby. Very protective indeed." Thomas, returning from a business call, joined us at that moment. "Everything all right here, ladies?" His commanding presence seemed to fill the restaurant. Evelyn's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered with a tight smile. "Thomas Williams, what a surprise. I wasn't aware you were acquainted with my former daughter-in-law." "Former?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware the divorce was finalized." He placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "Helena is a valued member of our team now. We're quite fortunate to have her expertise." The color drained from Evelyn's face. "She's working for Contech, but that's a direct competitor to Ellis Technologies." "Yes," Thomas agreed pleasantly. "Funny how things work out, isn't it?" After Evelyn retreated, visibly shaken, Thomas revealed something that made the pieces fall into place. "She approached me at a charity function last year," he explained. "Tried to use her connection to James to get information about Contech's acquisition plans. When I declined, she suggested James might be open to a more productive relationship. She was trying to use James for corporate espionage." I was stunned. "The Ellis family fortune isn't what it once was," Thomas said quietly. "They've been keeping up appearances, but the company has been struggling. I suspect Evelyn saw you as an obstacle to her plans for James to save the family business by any means necessary." The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. I had never been anything but a pawn in their game, someone to be used and discarded when I no longer served their purpose. The baby, my daughter, was supposed to solidify James's position in the Ellis family line. When the baby turned out to be a girl instead of the hoped-for boy, I became expendable. That night, as I processed this revelation, a sharp pain ripped through my abdomen, different from the earlier contractions. Within seconds, a gush of fluid soaked the bed. My water had broken 3 weeks early. The drive to Massachusetts General Hospital passed in a blur of pain and fear. Sandra held my hand in the back seat while Thomas drove breaking speed limits with calm authority. At 37 weeks, my baby was considered early, but not dangerously premature. Still, nothing had gone according to plan in this pregnancy, and I feared what might go wrong next. The labor and delivery unit admitted me immediately, confirming my water had broken and contractions were progressing rapidly. The nurse asked about my birth plan, my support person, whether the baby's father would be joining us. Each question was a fresh reminder of how alone I was in this moment. "I'm her support person," Sandra stated firmly, squeezing my hand. "And we have everything covered." The next 20 hours were the most physically and emotionally challenging of my life. My labor stalled at 7 centimeters for hours, then accelerated so quickly the epidural barely had time to take effect. Through it all, Sandra remained steadfastly by my side, wiping my brow, advocating with medical staff, and reminding me of my strength when I felt I had none left. "You can do this," she whispered during a particularly grueling contraction. "You've already survived so much worse." At 3:17 a.m., with 3 tremendous pushes and a primal scream that startled even the veteran delivery nurse, my daughter entered the world. The doctor placed her tiny vernix-covered body on my chest, and through tears I met Lily for the first time. She was perfect, a shock of dark hair like mine, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and lungs powerful enough to announce her arrival to the entire floor. The love that washed over me was unlike anything I had ever experienced, fierce, protective, and all-consuming. Hello, Lily, I whispered, counting her perfect fingers. It's just you and me now, but we're going to be okay. What I didn't know was that the hospital, following standard procedure, had attempted to contact James as he was still listed as my emergency contact. While I slept, the exhausted sleep of new motherhood events were unfolding that would bring my past crashing back into my present. I awoke to raised voices in the corridor outside my room. Sandra, who had gone home briefly to shower and change, had not yet returned. A nurse entered, looking flustered. Ms. Bennett, there are people insisting on seeing you and the baby. A man claiming to be your husband and an older woman. Hospital policy is to check with you first. My heart raced. I don't want to see them. Please don't let them in. Before the nurse could respond, the door burst open and James strode in, Evelyn close behind. He looked haggard and angry while Evelyn wore an expression of calculated concern. "Where is my child?" James demanded, scanning the room. "Sir, you can't just barge in here," the nurse protested, reaching for the call button. "It's fine," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I can handle this." James approached the bassinet where Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the drama surrounding her arrival. His expression shifted from anger to confusion as he studied her face. "She doesn't look like an Ellis," he muttered. "She looks like her mother," Evelyn said sharply. "James, we should speak to the doctor about paternity testing immediately." "You have no right to be here," I told them, struggling to sit up despite my post-delivery discomfort. "Please leave." "I have every right," James countered. "That's my daughter." "Is she?" The question hung in the air between us. "You made it very clear you didn't want this baby when you threw me out. You don't get to change your mind now that she's here." "We were concerned about your mental state," Evelyn interjected smoothly. "Pregnancy can cause such hormonal instability. We only wanted what was best for the baby. By kicking me out onto the street at 7 months pregnant, by changing the locks." My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "By telling me I would never give James a baby worthy of your family name." "You're exaggerating," Evelyn dismissed with a wave. "James, tell the nurse we'll need the discharge papers. We've prepared a nursery at home." "She's not going anywhere with you," I stated firmly, reaching for the call button. "Nurse, please call security. These people are not authorized visitors." James took a menacing step toward me. "You can't keep my daughter from me. I have rights." "You forfeited those rights when you said, and I quote, 'I didn't marry you for a kid. Just leave with that big belly.' Remember that, James, because I certainly do." The confrontation might have escalated further if not for the timely arrival of Sandra and Thomas. They entered the room like avenging angels, Thomas's imposing presence filling the doorway as Sandra rushed to my bedside. "Ellis," Thomas's voice was dangerously quiet. "What are you doing in Helena's room?" James spun around, his face draining of color as he recognized his professional superior. "Mr. Williams, this is a family matter." "Helena and Lily are family to us now," Sandra stated firmly. "You made your position quite clear when you abandoned your pregnant wife." "There seems to be a misunderstanding." Evelyn attempted her social smile firmly in place. "We're simply here to support Helena and the baby." "Really?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "That's not what your text messages to James indicated. The ones about getting rid of her before the birth." James paled further. "How did you—" "Helena showed us everything," Sandra cut in, though this was a bluff. "Every message, every bank withdrawal, every attempt to sabotage her pregnancy. We have it all documented for the divorce proceedings." Thomas moved closer to James, his voice dropping so hospital staff couldn't overhear. "By the way, James, I'm hosting a dinner next week for executives who will remain with the company after the acquisition. I expect you'll want to be there." "Acquisition?" James repeated, confusion evident. "Didn't you hear Contech is acquiring Ellis Technologies? The board voted yesterday. Of course, some positions will be consolidated." The implications hung heavy in the air. James looked shell-shocked while Evelyn's perfectly maintained facade began to crack around the edges. "You can't do this," she hissed at me. "You've turned them against us." "No," I replied calmly, drawing strength from the sleeping baby beside me. "You did that all by yourselves." A security guard appeared in the doorway, summoned by the nurse. "Is there a problem here?" "These people were just leaving," Thomas said firmly, "and they won't be back without Ms. Bennett's explicit permission." Watching James and Evelyn being escorted out by hospital security should have felt victorious, but mostly I felt empty, mourning not just my failed marriage, but the family I had thought we would become. "Are you really acquiring Ellis Technologies?" I asked Thomas when they had gone. He nodded grimly. "The deal has been in motion for months, well before you came to stay with us. James's department is one of the main targets for restructuring. Their numbers don't add up." "He might lose his job," I realized. "He might face worse than that if the financial discrepancies are as serious as they appear," Thomas replied. "But that's not your concern right now. Your job is to heal and take care of this beautiful little girl." Looking down at Lily's peaceful face, I knew he was right. Whatever happened to James now was the consequence of his own actions, and I had a far more important focus for my energy and love. The dinner at Thomas and Sandra's expansive home was scheduled for exactly 2 weeks after Lily's birth. Though I wasn't planning to attend, still exhausted from newborn care and recovery, Thomas insisted my presence was important. "You don't have to stay long," he assured me. "Just make an appearance. Trust me on this." That evening, Sandra helped me dress in a simple but elegant black dress that accommodated my postpartum body. We arranged for a nurse to watch Lily in the guest house, and Sandra applied light makeup to cover the dark circles under my eyes. "You look beautiful," she assured me. "Strong and dignified, exactly how you want to appear tonight." The main house was transformed for the occasion with soft lighting, elaborate floral arrangements, and waitstaff circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Business executives in expensive suits mingled in small groups, their conversations a gentle hum of corporate jargon and polite laughter. Thomas greeted me at the entrance, offering his arm with old-world courtesy. "Perfect timing," he murmured. "James just arrived." Across the room, looking uncomfortable in a slightly too tight suit, stood my estranged husband. He hadn't spotted me yet, too busy attempting to network with Contech executives who clearly knew more about his professional future than he did. Thomas guided me through the crowd, introducing me as Helena Bennett, our brilliant marketing consultant and new mother. Each introduction was met with warm congratulations and questions about the baby, creating a wave of goodwill that followed us through the room. When we finally approached James, his back was to us. Thomas cleared his throat. "Ellis, there's someone I'd like you to meet formally in her new capacity." James turned, his practiced smile freezing on his face as he recognized me. "Helena," he managed, his voice strangled. "What are you doing here? Ms. Bennett has been instrumental in our acquisition strategy," Thomas explained smoothly. "Her market analysis convinced the board that certain segments of Ellis Technologies were worth salvaging, though others will need complete restructuring." James's face cycled through shock, confusion, and dawning horror as he processed what this meant. "You've been working for Contech all this time." "Since shortly after you threw me out," I confirmed, keeping my voice steady. "Life works in mysterious ways, doesn't it?" Before James could respond, commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Evelyn Ellis, clearly uninvited, was arguing with a staff member who was attempting to politely block her entry. "My son is an executive at Ellis Technologies," she insisted loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "I have every right to be at this event." Thomas excused himself to handle the situation, leaving James and me in an island of uncomfortable silence amidst the party's flow. "You planned this," he accused in a harsh whisper. "You've been plotting revenge all along." "No, James," I said quietly. "I've been surviving the destruction you and your mother caused. There's a difference." "Is the baby even mine?" he demanded suddenly. "Tell me the truth." I regarded him coldly. "You made it very clear you didn't want her. Why the sudden interest in paternity?" "Because if she's an Ellis, she has rights to the family trust," he hissed. "Money that could save what's left of my career after your new friends finish dismantling our company." The calculated selfishness of his concern struck me like a physical blow. Not love for his daughter, not regret for abandoning us, but financial desperation drove his sudden interest in fatherhood. "You should know," I said carefully, "that I had genetic testing done during the pregnancy after finding your family's medical history in your email, the one showing Ellis men often have fertility issues." His face paled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that according to the prenatal DNA test, you are not biologically capable of fathering a child, James. Your sperm count is nearly zero, a genetic condition you inherited from your father. Something your mother almost certainly knew when she was pressuring you to provide an Ellis heir." The revelation hit him with visible force, making him stagger slightly. "That's impossible. The baby—" "Lily is my daughter," I stated firmly. "How she came to be is no longer your concern." The truth was more complicated. During our marriage, we had briefly discussed fertility treatments if conception proved difficult, but had been fortunate to conceive naturally, or so I thought. The prenatal testing had revealed that James could not possibly be Lily's biological father, raising questions I wasn't ready to confront about his fidelity during our marriage. Had he secretly used a donor without telling me? Had he known all along he wasn't the father? Or was there an even more disturbing explanation? At that moment, Thomas returned with security personnel discreetly flanking Evelyn, who looked furious but somewhat contained. "Ms. Ellis insisted on joining us," Thomas announced pleasantly. "Since she's here, perhaps this is a good time for our special announcement." He clinked a spoon against his champagne glass, gathering everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate the next chapter for Contech Industries and the acquisition of Ellis Technologies. We're particularly grateful to have James Ellis with us, as his department has been the subject of our most intense scrutiny." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as James shifted uncomfortably. "Our audit team has discovered some fascinating creative accounting in the business development division," Thomas continued. "Records suggesting corporate espionage attempts to access confidential Contech information and financial misrepresentation spanning the past 18 months. All eyes turned to James, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. "Fortunately," Thomas continued, "we have a witness willing to provide evidence of these activities, someone who was approached directly about obtaining proprietary information." Evelyn suddenly looked ill, her social mask cracking completely. She knew exactly who that witness was. "In light of these findings," Thomas concluded, "we'll be meeting with the SEC next week. Those involved will of course be notified formally." The implication hung heavy in the air. Corporate espionage carried potential criminal penalties beyond mere job loss. James lunged toward me, grabbing my arm with bruising force. "You did this," he snarled. "You've ruined everything." Security moved swiftly, detaching his grip and escorting him toward the exit. Evelyn followed, shooting venomous looks over her shoulder. "Are you all right?" Sandra appeared at my side, her eyes concerned. "Actually, yes," I realized with some surprise. "I think I am." The confrontation had been unpleasant but oddly cathartic, the final confirmation that I had escaped a family built on lies, manipulation, and moral bankruptcy. Whatever James and Evelyn faced now was the consequence of their own actions, not my revenge. I excused myself shortly after, eager to return to Lily. As I crossed the manicured lawn toward the guest house, I felt lighter than I had in months, as though invisible chains had finally fallen away. 6 months passed in a blur of midnight feedings, first smiles, and the indescribable joy of watching Lily discover the world. We moved into a small but charming apartment near Sandra and Thomas, who remained steadfast friends and supporters. My consulting work expanded to multiple clients, allowing me flexible hours and the financial independence I desperately needed as a single mother. The divorce proceedings moved forward without contest after James was indicted for corporate espionage. Facing potential prison time, he signed everything I asked for, including full custody of Lily with no visitation rights. The house I had once shared with him was sold, the proceeds split according to our prenuptial agreement. Therapy became my weekly anchor, a safe space to process the betrayal, grief, and lingering questions about how I had missed so many warning signs. My therapist, Dr. Kim, helped me recognize the subtle patterns of emotional manipulation that had characterized my relationship with James from the beginning. "You weren't blind," she assured me during one particularly difficult session. "They were exceptionally skilled at deception. Your only mistake was loving someone who didn't deserve it." Slowly, I rebuilt my sense of self, not just as Lily's mother or James's ex-wife, but as Helena, a woman of strength, intelligence, and worth, independent of any relationship. My support system expanded beyond Sandra and Thomas to include a mother's group, reconnections with friends I had neglected during my marriage, and even some of my former in-laws who had always disliked Evelyn's controlling ways and reached out after the divorce. Lily thrived, growing into a happy, curious baby with my curly hair and a smile that could light up the darkest room. Her paternity remained a private question, one I would address when the time was right. For now, she was simply and perfectly mine. The final chapter with the Ellis family came unexpectedly, nearly 7 months after Lily's birth. I was in the park with her enjoying a rare warm day in early spring when Evelyn approached our bench. She looked older, the perfectly maintained facade crumbling around the edges. James had been sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, and the Ellis family name was tarnished by scandal. "She's beautiful," Evelyn said, looking at Lily with an expression I couldn't quite read. "She has the Ellis chin." "No," I corrected firmly. "She has my grandfather's chin. She's a Bennett through and through." Evelyn sat uninvited at the far end of the bench. "I've come to propose a reconciliation, for the baby's sake." "Reconciliation," I repeated flatly. "After you called me unworthy, destroyed my marriage, and tried to take my child." "Families are complicated," she replied as if discussing a minor disagreement. "James made mistakes, but he's still Lily's father. The Ellis name still carries weight despite recent difficulties." "James is not Lily's father," I stated clearly. "The prenatal DNA test confirmed that. Something I suspect you knew all along given your family's fertility issues." A flicker of something recognition perhaps or calculation crossed her face before she composed herself. "DNA isn't everything. Family is about legacy, about connections that transcend biology." "No," I said, rising and lifting Lily from her stroller. "Family is about love, respect, and trust, things you and James never understood." "You can't keep her from her heritage," Evelyn called as I walked away. "Every child needs grandparents, needs family history." I turned back one last time. Lily has all the family she needs, people who love her unconditionally and will never measure her worth by her gender or her ability to continue a family name. That's the only legacy that matters. Walking away from Evelyn that day, Lily secure in my arms, I finally felt the last pieces of my old life fall away. The path ahead wasn't what I had planned or expected, but it was mine to shape ours, to shape Lily and me, surrounded by people who had earned their place in our lives through genuine love and support. The journey from betrayal to healing hadn't been easy or straight. There had been days when grief overwhelmed me, when the unfairness of it all seemed too much to bear. But for every dark moment, there had been counterbalancing joy, Lily's first laugh, the satisfaction of professional recognition, the freedom to make choices based solely on what was right for us. I had learned that family isn't defined by blood or surnames, but by the people who stand beside you when everything falls apart. It's built on actions, not promises, on consistent love, not conditional approval. Most importantly, I had discovered my own resilience, a strength I never knew I possessed until it was the only thing standing between me and collapse. That strength would be my gift to Lily, along with the wisdom that our worth is never determined by others' ability to recognize it. Standing in the spring sunshine, my daughter's weight solid and real in my arms, I felt something that had been missing for too long: peace and the quiet certainty that we would be more than okay. We would be extraordinary. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted completely betrayed you? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest strength is shown not in how we handle success, but in how we rise after being knocked down. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that there's always hope after heartbreak. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it.